Hi guys, it is Kim. I'm all prepped out today. I went all preppy shirt on you guys. It even has like contrasting little cuffs. It's a little shorter than your average preppy shirt, and I can't tell where I want to button it yet. We're working out the details. I don't know. Anyway, welcome. Hey Debbie. Well, happy birthday to your daughter. Enjoy your clam and oyster dinner. I'm here in Berkeley, California on a sunny afternoon slash evening. And the if you guys haven't seen the labs book is done and you can order it, you can buy it now. This one has a shiny cover. This isn't the binding you'll be getting if you order the books. This is a test run. But it's done and people can buy it now at commonsenselabsbook.com, and then you can sign up there. You can get either a physical copy or a digital copy. The physical copies aren't shipping for a couple more weeks, but while you're waiting, you'll get a digital copy. So, best of both worlds. So, glad to be back with you. I haven't been on for a couple of weeks. It's just been a little bit of a crazy time. So, I'm back here with you guys today. Glad to be here. Although, about a half an hour, I was laying upon the sofa, feeling like I just wanted to continue to lay upon the sofa because I am that person. Anyways, but I'm glad that I got it together so that I could join you and have a little chat. Sorry that I've been absent. Glad to be here tonight. I'm happy for your questions, whatever you want to talk about. Hey, Susan, good to see ya. And yeah, so we're here together. We're here. We're here. I'm on both. I'm streaming from a platform called StreamYard onto both Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you are coming from, you just join on up and say some things in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. So basically, some people have asked about the book. Again, this is not exactly the, I mean, this is the cover. This is just a test copy, but it looks very similar when you get it. So some people have asked a couple questions I thought I would clarify. We designed it so that you can print it on your home printer. Now, you don't have, if you get the digital copy, you don't have to print every single page, which is, that's just a lot of printing. But there are at the back of the book lab ranges that you might, want to print out. And so if you get this book, we did not design it as a Kindle book. It's 8.5 by 11 paper. So it'll come out of your printer. So not a Kindle version, it's a PDF digital version. So you can print whatever pages from it you would like to print. So that's how this is designed. All right. So let us go to the questions that are coming in here. Do I eat fruit? Asked Janelle. I do eat fruit. I did not eat fruit. I mean, I did eat a little fruit. So cucumbers are a fruit. So, I ate a lot of fruit. I love cucumbers, my favorite thing. But I know what you mean. You mean what we think of as fruits, right? So, like apples and bananas and oranges and all that. So my first 5 years of keto, 4.5 to 5 years of keto, 4.5. I don't. Does it really matter? I don't know. 4.5, 5. I only ate occasional berries. It was, I think I had like a piece of a nectarine one year during the summer, right? Like I did not make it a habit to eat fruit. However, the last 2 years, I have included fruit in my diet, but I don't know that you would call, well, I know you probably wouldn't call my current diet 100% fully ketogenic. I would call it a low carb diet at this point. It works better for me now. So what happened, I can just tell you, like, very metabolically unhealthy. I went keto, went very strict keto, kept my carbs very, very, very low, and stayed away from all sweet fruits except, like I said, very small servings of berries, which are pretty low in sugar. And then I stayed that way, got a lot healthier, lost some weight. Then I stalled out. Then I said, what do I have to look at? I was metabolically healthy. My blood markers were all really good. I just didn't weigh what I wanted to weigh. And then I transitioned to a more of a low carb diet. So I went high protein, low carb. I started to include things like fruit and more vegetables, lost more weight at that point. And so we all just have to find what works best for us at our on our journey. But since you asked me, do I eat fruit? I do eat fruit. And it's been really nice this summer, having some nectarines. But, this is what I do with fruit, right? Nectarines are my favorite fruit. And so I get very excited about summertime because it's nectarine season. Nectarines this summer were terrible. They were not very good. I mean, they're not terrible, is probably a stretch. They were not up to my standard on how I want. And so I want to eat it. I would start eating it. And if it was not a good one, I would I would not eat it. So if I'm gonna have any higher carb foods, it's got to be worth it. I don't want to have a crappy nectarine, right? I mean, that's true of any food, right? So but yeah, I do eat fruit. However, if you're trying to be in ketosis, for most people, unless you're very, very active, it's going to be a struggle to be in ketosis and eat very much fruit. So it kind of depends what your goals and how you're trying to do things these days. But I don't think there's anything. I know I'm a little out of sync with some people. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with fruit if you're not in a terrible metabolic place, right? If you've gotten yourself fairly metabolically healthy, I think including a small amount of fruit at seasonally appropriate fruit at the right time is probably not the thing that's going to cause you a lot of damage. So it has to be in a full picture of making good choices across the board. And so for me, I'm very cautious and conscious about my dietary choices, and including some fruit works for a lot of people, but not all people. If you're very diabetic and watermelon makes your blood sugar go to 250, don't have it. You shouldn't, right? We're all somewhat unique. But if you have a fairly healthy insulin response at this time, then you can talk about expanding your options if you choose to. I don't think you have to, but if you choose to. All right. Another question came in. Yvonne said, how do you restart keto, please? So for me, it's really simple. The first month of keto, whether it's the first time you do it or a future time, right, when you're getting back on it, either start or restart, it's don't worry about calories. Don't worry about quantities of a lot of things. Just cut the carbs down. Stick to eating things like eggs, bacon, steak, ground beef, leafy greens, use butter and olive oil to cook with. Cucumbers and pickles are your friends, some olives, just eat like good, nourishing, higher fat, higher protein kind of way. Cut out bread, pasta, rice, sugary pastries at all, sugar or not, bagels, anything real starchy with a lot of carbs, just start cutting those things out. Then when you get about a month in and those things are out of your diet and you're feeling pretty good, you can look at refining or molding in more specific ways. But I think the first step of keto is always just put your main focus on getting the carbs lower, and then all the rest of the stuff can come later. That's how I think, overcomplicating at the beginning is always sort of a death, in my opinion. Dachshund Gal says, good evening. Found out my phase angle. I don't know what a phase angle is. I'm going to have to Google that. Phase angle? Phase angle. Well, that's an now I'm looking at astronomy, so I'm confused. Seca scale? I honestly don't know what a phase angle is. What is a phase angle? Okay, we're looking it up. What is a phase angle? According to the Seca scale. The Seca uses it's an bioimpedance scale, okay? Phase angle. Phase angle is Oh, wow. Okay, phase angle. This is physics. I'm okay, I'm going to stop now. It's physics. It's a way your scale calculates something. The alternating current and voltage periodically change their polarity and direction. I think it's just something about how your scale is working. So I would not. Yeah, I would do some googling there because it sounds like it's something about your scale. All right. Um, Jennifer, glad to have you back. Thank you. Appreciate it. Um, Eichhorn flour. Eichhorn flour, if I remember correctly, is an ancient grain. It's a grain. Some people respond better to it. I think it's a whole grain. If I remember, I think it's kind of. I'm from Berkeley, California. We call those things hippie flowers, right? Things that are like kamut. So I'm just googling like a fool today. But Eichhorn flour, as far as I know, I mean, it's gonna be pretty high in carbs, but it's, probably more of a, oh yeah, it's an ancient wheat species. So it's still wheat, but it's an ancient grain. And so a lot of people will say, well, ancient grains are better tolerated by our body, right? You'll hear people say it's like modern grains being a problem. So if she's somebody who's very like into more historical eating or something like that, probably it has, because ancient grains usually have a lesser impact on blood sugar than modern grains. The more processed a food is, the more likely it is to have a bigger blood sugar impact, right? Because you can think about that, processing the highly processed foods, the more processed they are, they kind of start with a boost in terms of how your body responds to them. And so my guess is that an eichhorn flour is going to have a slower release, but it's still a very high carb food. So it kind of just depends what you're using it for. Terry, hey Terry. Terry says 159 pounds down, 11 more to go. Thank you, Kim. You're my hero. You're doing so good. Um, Mireya or Mireya, is that how you say it? Mireya says, what do you think of carb cycling? People who eat candy and rice, then low carb. I'm confused how they do that. Well, I just think it's kind of a terrible idea. I mean, so there are a couple of versions of carb cycling. The most famous is probably something called Carb Night, which I think that's John Kiefer originated that. A funny story, if you guys know Keto Savage, Robert Sykes, he started on keto doing that, and so it's like you're keto all day long, and then at the end, in the evening, you have like a very high carb, like junk food filled meal. And he was like, I felt terrible, and then I just stopped doing the junk food meal, and I felt better, and I realized I was just keto, right? So I'm not a big fan of, certainly, candy as a part of your carb meal. Now, there might be reasons that somebody wants to eat a higher carb diet. Generally speaking, the only good reasons I see for those are athletes. So, like, there are examples of people who, and I'm not saying athletes need carbs, but there are some people who have super high metabolisms, right? They burn calories like a mother. Right? They're just burning. You know these people, right? Where it's like they can't eat enough to keep the weight on their body. And so some of those people, just have extremely high energy needs. And uh, refined carbs are not very satiating. They don't make you feel as full. And so there are some people who are so fast metabolizers that they add those foods because it's the only way to keep themselves from losing weight. I don't think that's most of us. And if you say, how can they do that and lose weight? The way they can do that and lose weight is they're in a calorie deficit, right? They're not, even if they eat some carbs, their overall calories for the whole day are still lower than their energetic needs. Now, for people like me who have a really, unfortunately, low and efficient metabolic rate, and for many people that follow me, like, I just getting my hunger needs met take care of all the calories I have if I want to see any weight loss. So I don't have any room for candy or even rice. It's too calorically dense for me. Even if I am healthy enough to have the carbs, those carbs aren't filling enough for me to include them. I need to use my calorie budget much more wisely than including things like rice and candy. So I think, most people, if they're doing those things, it's because they're working out a lot and they have a higher caloric need than most of us do. A lot of us who did not win this genetic lottery and haven't done the things over our young lives to really stoke a better metabolic situation when we come into middle age. We are playing Tetris out there, people, in terms of getting our nutritional needs met and enjoying our lives. And so I don't got a lot of extra room in there for things like candy. Not usually, not most days anyway. Joanne said, brought my carbs way under 20, drop fat and dairy, and eating high protein minimum following the MREX, and by golly, it's melting off. I am thrilled. For me, protein does help deter appetite, not fat. I think you would find, Joanne, if you dropped your fat super duper duper low, eventually you'd be super hungry there too. So protein is very satiating for absolute sure. I eat a high protein, lower fat diet. So I'm with you. But there is a bottom limit before you're, because protein is not a great energy source. And so, you know, your body has a certain energy need. And if you drop the energy, so carbs and fats make up our energy. Protein is the protein to energy. This is Ted Naiman talks about this. Um, Once your protein is around 40 to 45, for some people it can go as high as 50%, that you can be great. But if it goes to more like 60, 70, 80, if you're trying to get almost all your caloric needs met from protein, a lot of people start experiencing some out of control hunger. So you got to balance those things. It's not all just one. Okay. Joanne says, "Oh, I'm eating about 1,200 calories, about 30 grams of fat." Yeah. So I would not stay there for a long time, Joanne. So it's great for short periods of time. Bring it on down, drop it down, lose some body fat. If you stay there for a long time, you're going to get into a situation where your metabolism starts to really adapt to that. Also, around 30 grams of fat every day. Now, if you're doing that like 1 or 2 days a week, and the other days you're coming up, totally fine. But if you're just 30 grams of fat every day, 20 carbs or less every day, I think you're cruising for a bruising long term. So it can be a short term stop off. It can be something you do some days and not other days. I would not do that for a long period of time. All right. Like somebody could do 30 grams of fat and a higher carb limit, right? But your energy calories right now are very, very, very low. And like I said, fine for short periods of time, but I would not do that for years on end. I feel like you're going to regret it. Okay, because that's why I have a program called Keto Unstuck, because people do things like that for very long periods of time, and then it all kind of goes to hell. So it's what I would say is periodize it. Do it for some days, but not all days, or do it for a few weeks, but not for years, right? In and out, in and out. You need to meet your energy needs. You need to meet your metabolic needs. You need to fuel your body. You need your leptin to be working. You need your ghrelin to be working. You need your hunger hormones to be working. You need your thyroid to be working. Chronic under eating is a scourge upon the earth. And so I stalled out at one point on my ketogenic diet because I was chronically under eating. And then I would have these periods where I couldn't keep it up because I was starving, and I was under eating, and then I was overeating, and then I was under eating, and I just started gaining weight, and I had to like deal with that, and my metabolic was a mess. And so then I started to intentionally periodize eating less, eating more, eating less, eating more. And that is how I have continued to be able to lose weight into these more recent years. So I would say I would not want somebody eating 30 grams of fat, 20 grams of carbs or less, and most of their calories coming from protein for very long periods of time. All right. Vicky says, would you recommend checking blood ketones every day? No. I mean, I did no, did I? For a very short period of time, I did, but kind of depends what you're looking for, Vicky or Michael. If you're trying to treat a neurological issue, you've got something going on there, maybe early dementia problems, you have epilepsy, right? Those people are going to need to check their ketones on the regular to make sure they're in a good range. If your main goal is to be healthy and see weight loss, I would not worry about your ketone number most of the time. I think it's good when you do check your ketones that you do see some ketones. I think that can be a good check-in for keeping yourself honest in terms of what you're eating and how you're doing. But I don't know that that's a daily need. Facebook user, so I don't know who you are. For some reason, it's not showing up. I would love to join one of your cut programs. Do I allow carnivore? Absolutely. Yeah, we have carnivores in there, no problem at all. But we're not doing another one until January, just so you know. But keto unstuck, we'll do another one in January. Most people don't want to do an unstuck program over the holidays, just to be honest, and coming up sooner than we think they are. Melinda says you're looking skinny. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm working on my cheekbones. I Yeah, I'm going into the fall. I'm going to be doing a reverse diet, so I'm not going to see the scale go down for a while, and I'm trying to get okay with that. But I'm enjoying the process. I would also say, Docs and Gal, those home scales, notoriously inaccurate, notorious for telling you all sorts of nonsense. So I would not worry about it too much. All right. Peggy says, have you heard about having a lower heart rate with keto carnivore? Had an EKG yesterday, heart rate was low, was fasted. I don't know that much about this, but I would imagine long fasting might have a effect on your heart rate. I definitely, you could probably Google that one. I'm not a fasting expert, but I would imagine a 17-hour fast, maybe you had that experience. Susan said, is it best to stay away from sugar-free flavoring that is put in coffee? Depends how you respond to it. So I'm imagining, so there are two types of things that I could interpret your question as. There are certain types of coffee, like you can buy coffee at the store that has like cinnamon flavor added, right? Where it's like there's no sugar or sugar substitute added to the coffee, but the coffee grounds have some type of essence in them. So there's a flavor to it. And then other ones are like when you go to Starbucks and they pump like sugar free syrups into your coffee. The first one, I don't think there's much impact for most people on. The second one, there's a variety of types of sweeteners that they might use in those syrups. The ones at Starbucks, I think they use sucralose, but that sometimes they can use things like maltitol. And so you want to be careful about what you're putting in any of your food and make sure you respond well to it. I'm not anti-sweetener. I'm not anti-flavoring, but I would say, when you want to know what you're getting and know how you respond to those things. Tammy said, I started keto in 2017, pandemic low carb, back to keto June this year. Now almost carnivore, dropped 15 pounds 2 weeks ago, back up about 8, getting frustrated. All right. So that sounds like a lot of water weight fluctuation, right? If so, dropped 15 pounds over 2 weeks, then came back up 8, if that's what I'm reading that correctly. That sounds like you've got some real big swings of water weight. So I would look at your sodium intake. I'm not saying don't eat sodium. I'm saying standardize your sodium intake. Because if you have a lot of sodium one day and not a lot of sodium the next day, and then a lot of sodium, your water weight's going to just go up and down and up and down. So try to standardize the amount of sodium you get in a day and see if you get more stabilized there. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much. Apparently, people like the preppy look on me. So it was like a little warm, and this is cool. Bonnie said, I have added some carbs back from stress eating. The weight came back fast. I'm trying to get on my plan. All right. So first things first, stress eating, understandable. It's soothing to eat. All right. What did we do when we were babies and we needed soothing? We nursed or we ate, right? So not uncommon. I would say you want to look at not stress eating, if you can, obviously. And Sue, you want to also be aware that if you eat high carb, high starch, high sugar foods, each gram of carbohydrates will bring with it some grams of water. So you're gonna see if you're somebody who's strictly very, very low carb most of the time, and then you eat a bunch of carbs, you're gonna see the scale go up 3, 4, 5, 6 pounds really quick. Good news is most of that, almost all of that, even all of it is not body fat, it is water weight. So if you continue that process and you do so while overeating, sure, you will gain body fat by overeating consistently for a while. But, a little bit of extra carbs, the weight will come off when you get the extra carbs out of your diet, because yeah, you've got a lot of water weight that your body hangs on to. Oh, we erroneously call that inflammation, and it can be. You can get inflammation from that kind of activity, but it's also simply just a biological fact that carbs bring water. And so there's just more water in your system. So it doesn't necessarily even mean that you're having a negative response. It's just you're having a natural response, which is that water will be added to your system. Um, all right. Dana says, "Why is losing weight so hard?" Dana, I feel you. I drink water, watch carbs, can't lose weight. Are you looking at your calories overall, Dana? Because for some people, counting carbs is not enough. For me, it is not enough. I can eat almost a zero carb diet and I can gain weight. So we all have to get to a place where I mean, the beauty is most of us who gain weight on zero carb, we're metabolically healthy. We are simply somebody who now needs to pay more attention to our overall dietary intake of all our macronutrients and balance them so that our energy level, our incoming energy is appropriate for our body, our situation, ourselves, where we find ourselves. We talk about that a lot in Keto Unstuck, and I talk about that a lot on my podcast. But for me, yeah, I would love losing weight to be easier. Losing weight has never been all that easy for me, but I don't have another choice. So I don't try. I try not to think too much about how hard it is and try to think about how I can best optimize the situation that I'm in. And that is being in an appropriate deficit, um, not being in a deficit all the time, taking diet breaks, taking time to really evaluate how my body is responding, going back to maintenance for periods of time to give my body a chance to recover, get my hunger hormones in check, feel nourished, feel emotionally more supported by food, all of those things. Then I go back into a period of a cut again. I come in, I go out, I come in, I go out. And it makes my life so much better. Dana says, "Oh, I don't watch calories. How many do I have to stay around?" It's going to really vary. Here's what I recommend. Okay. Here's what I recommend. So, track your food for a week. Track all your food for a week. Everything and carefully. Use a scale, a digital scale. Really track everything and then see what you're eating. And then if it's a reasonable amount of food, so what you can do is then look up something called TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. Now, TDEE calculators, you put in your height, your weight, your sex, all that stuff. And it tells you what an average person of your height, age, size, and activity level burns. We'll focus on the word average. There's a range. So it might say that you're supposed to be able to eat 2,000 calories, and you're like, I'm only eating 1,800. It's an average. Somebody else is 2,200. They have your extra calories. Go ahead and kill them, but I don't know what to do about that, right? It's an average. So don't take it as gospel. It's not every single person should have a TDEE that matches the TDEE calculator. There are too many letters in that. I'm sorry. But it'll give you kind of a double check, right? Am I anywhere near close to this? And then if you want to lose weight, you're probably going to have to eat less than that, right? Because if you're eating 2,700 calories a day and your actual TDE is 2,000 calories a day, you're going to be gaining weight. If your TDEE is actually 2,000 and you're eating 2,000, you're going to maintain your weight. So if you want to lose weight, you got to eat less than that. And so that's something you might want to look at. Now, if you really are very carefully checking and you're like, wow, I only am eating like 1,200 calories and it says I should be able to eat like 2,000, then I would say you're probably in what I would call a high degree of metabolic adaptation. And that's something you got to fix, you got to work on. So something's going on under the hood that needs to be tinkered with. And that might mean a reverse diet, eating more for a while. It might look at your thyroid, look at your hormones, but something is wiggy if you're getting that big a discrepancy and not seeing weight loss. But I would just take a week and track. Take a week and track. Hey, Brooklyn. Do I recommend a good protein keto granola? Asked Angela. I would say the problem is most granolas out there, to be perfectly honest, are very high in fat and very high in carbs because they're most keto granolas are mostly nuts. So I'll give you an example. My friend Nisha Berry. She today posted her what I eat in a day, and she was eating some keto granola. And she was saying, I'm eating this keto granola in part because I'm trying to not lose weight, right? So I would say you can use a little bit of keto granola. Like I'll make a yogurt bowl and put a little keto granola on top, but it's got to be just a little bit if you're trying to lose weight. Okay. Karen said, I went off plan a couple weeks. I could feel the depression creeping back in. Yeah, it's very, very important. If you have any mental health challenges, like I do and did, to stay on plan. Mental health to me is like number one. Many years, so my first 2 years of keto, I was working on improving my mental health quite a bit. I suffer from significant depression and have since I was 8 years old, and keto really helped. And when I would try to reduce my dietary fat, this is something we don't talk about enough. When I would try to reduce my dietary fat in an effort to lose more body fat, my depression symptoms went back up. So I had to keep my fat high enough that I felt pretty good mentally. But over time, that shifted, and I was able to lower the fat and eat more carbs. Now, I the carbs I eat are like some fruits and vegetables and maybe an occasional treat. It's not a lot of crappage, crappy garbage. But if I eat junk food, my mental health will suffer. It's just very well known that that can cause problems. But I talked to Chris Palmer, who is an MD psychiatrist who works with people with keto and depression. And he said it does seem like there's a sweet spot after 2 or 3 years where people seem to be almost put their depression into a partial remission and can change things at that point, but some people can't. And so it just you kind of have to stay with it as long as you need to. Um Docs and Gal says, I feel like after a period of weight loss, many people I know have 6 month periods of staying the same weight. Me too. It starts up again. You have great coaching advice. Thanks. Yeah, I had to do something different to make the weight loss restart. But some people they just need a break. And I would say if you've been experiencing a long stall, it's time to get curious about what's going on. And instead of thinking your body is doing the wrong thing, just keto harder, things like that. I would say get more curious and loving to your body and say like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Get it. I see you, Roberta. Roberta. I will answer your question in a second. Sorry, I missed you. And just get curious and try to work on what's not going right. Roberta says, my daughter has been having trouble with constipation. She's 22 years old and doing keto. I told her to take magnesium citrate, but she has trouble swallowing pills. Can she take the magnesium citrate liquid you buy at Walmart, a tablespoon a day? So magnesium citrate, the stuff they sell at Walmart is a laxative. So that's probably going to potentially help this. I'm not a doctor and this is not medical advice, but obviously a laxative is probably going to help with constipation issues. I don't think that's medical advice to say that. And magnesium citrate in that form is indeed a laxative. So I would imagine that that would help. And from there, it might be about sort of figuring out the appropriate amount of things that she needs. If she's suffering from constipation, though, I would also be very clear that she's getting enough water in her diet as well as plenty of sodium. So if you're not getting enough water and sodium, so getting enough sodium allows the sort of osmotic change in the colon. It pulls the water into the colon rather than out of the colon and allows things to move through your colon. And so if you're not getting enough sodium, it's not just magnesium rather, but if you're not getting enough sodium, that's really going to slow things down. In fact, if you've ever heard of a salt flush, that's when you drink like a whole bunch of salt all at once. It tends to give people the runs and Although if you do it too fast, too much, you might also vomit. So that's not good. But it'll flush out your digestive system real good. So make sure I'm not suggesting that. It's a little violent. But make sure she's getting plenty of salt, plenty of water, and yeah, probably some magnesium citrate would help. Um, and things like Redmond's Relight or Element are pretty high in sodium, so those are also options that are going to maybe be helpful. Docs and Gal said, I'm so glad you had told me about the eating fat depression connection. I was so much better for so long. Now, 2 years in, I've lowered my fat intake and found it has returned. Yeah, you got to find the level that works for you. I would rather have 20 extra pounds on my booty than want to kill myself. So, those are, if those are your two extremes, pick wisely. Um, I uh, I luckily eventually was able to find a happy medium. I still have depressed days. I will admit that I have some days where I just don't wanna. I don't wanna, and I don't wanna talk about it, right? I still have those down days. People are often very confused, when they meet me because I have a very buoyant personality. I am a smiley, friendly, outgoing person. I think people don't think people like that have depression issues, but we do. And so your personality can be very different than your mental health status. And so, I just want to encourage anybody who feels like they're struggling, um, that we want to make sure we support them properly. And getting enough fat is very important for some of us. Now, for me, I was like, oh, okay, as long as I'm above 65 grams of fat or 80 grams of fat, like there was a level. More didn't help more, but there was a minimum level at which I felt mentally good, and I couldn't continue for a long time beyond that. Bonnie says, as a teen, you were a bulimic, it sounds like. I used to drink hot, salty water to throw up. Yeah, don't do that. Sounds terrible. I don't know. I couldn't do it. I can't drink real salty water. I can drink Element or Relight. Those taste delicious to me. But if I just put salt in water and more than just a teeny bit, try to drink it, I will feel like I'm going to throw up. So I don't like that. I don't like that at all. All right. What other questions do we have, people? Let me see if I missed anything. Cheryl has suggested oxy powder. So oxy powder, I wonder if oxy powder is magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is found to be a gut irritant, which actually does cause an effect of uh, making things go through your digestive tract. So that can be helpful as well. I am not. Excuse me. Root beer. Excuse the burps. This is the creamy Zevia root beer, creamy root beer. I like these a lot. I usually do half and half creamy root beer and plain seltzer water just to kind of tone it down, but I just grabbed a can. I was in a hurry today. Sherry says, when do I go live again? Most Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific. So in 23 hours and some minutes. Oh, sorry, Terry, if I missed your question. How do you suggest someone does it when someone is starting the maintenance phase? Okay, so Terry, I would look at what your intake is. So I would track your food for a bit if you're not tracking right now. See how many calories you're eating. See how much protein. Get all that dialed in, and then add more fat to your diet in small increments, pushing up the amount of food you're taking in. Because obviously, right, like let's say you've been losing weight at 1,500 calories for the past few weeks or months, and you're dropping a little weight, dropping it a little weight, dropping a little weight. And then you get to wanting to be in maintenance, you want to theoretically, if you were losing about a pound of weight a week, you could add about 500 calories. If you were averaging about 200, if you were averaging about a half a pound a week of weight loss, then it's more like adding about 250 calories. If it's sort of fluctuating and all over the place and it maybe averages out to like 2 or 3 pounds a month, then I might add maybe 200 calories worth of fat to your back to your diet, as long as you were getting enough protein and all that kind of stuff to begin with, and see how you do. Does your weight then maintain? You're always going to gain a pound or two as you go from a diet or a cut, 1 to 2 pounds a week. Yeah, so somewhere between it's gonna be somewhere between 500 and 1,000 more calories, which is quite a bit. So if that's truly what you've been losing recently, then you've got a ways to go. So I would maybe jump up to, maybe 2,000 calories and eat that for a couple of weeks and see what your weight does if you were at 1,500, and kinda see hang out there, and then, see if your weight is go trending up or trending down, right? And then Terry, if you actually have been losing 1 to 2 pound a week, that's what I'm saying. If you haven't, then that's going to be too much, right? But if it's truly been 1 to 2 pounds a week, that's the difference. That so if you've been losing on average a pound a week, your maintenance calories will be around 500 more than they are. So I'm going on the low side by saying go up to 2,000 and then hang out there for a while, see what your weight does, and then adjust. If now I'm losing about a quarter pound a week this month. I lost a pound or two over this month. Still too low. Bump it up a little more. If you're like, oh, I've gained about a half a pound this month. Well, you're probably about right, but you can drop it down at 50 or 100, right? So you're just kind of dialing it in there. Lynn says, what could be a reason why no one would have weight loss on strict ketovore? Blood work is great, physically active, but have actually gained weight. My guess is that you are eating too many calories. That's what it was for me. I know I am a little out of step talking about calories. A lot of people don't like the topic, but calories are the thing that made my weight loss actually make sense and work. And so I would say if you are in any style of eating. Now, I am a big supporter of carnivore. I am a big supporter of keto. I am a big supporter of ketovore. I'm not saying your diet doesn't matter, but I'm saying any diet, if you're eating more energy than you need, you're gonna struggle to lose weight. So clearly you are. Tammy says gaining muscle will weigh more. Absolutely, Tammy, but gaining muscle is challenging. So, if you're very new to weight training, and you're lifting a lot of weights, you absolutely might be gaining a little bit of muscle. If a woman was new to weight training and she was training 3 to 5 days a week, a pretty solid program, she might be gaining a pound of muscle a month or so. But over time, that might level off a little bit. So yeah. But if you're not lifting weights, then it's not gaining. Then you aren't gaining much muscle. So that is just very context dependent. I do have two beverages here. How do you know what to set your macros to? Asked Patty. First, you set your protein. So protein is going to be primary protein, Greek primary protein, same root word. Anyway, so set your protein right. I would say set your protein. An easy rule of thumb, you can go a little lower if you want to, but an easy rule of thumb is eat about a gram of protein per pound of goal weight. So if you think you should weigh around 150 pounds, aim for about 150 grams of protein. Keep your carbs in the range that is appropriate for your metabolic health. If you're very metabolically unhealthy, your carbs are going to need to be pretty low. If you want to be in ketosis, your carbs are going to need to be pretty low, 20 grams or less, probably for a lot of people, especially if they're sedentary. And then the amount of fat you eat is really going to depend on what your current goals are, what your current energy intake is. So it's very variable. Anne Marie says, was diagnosed with Hashimoto's 3 months ago. Is taking NP thyroid. I like that one. Still experiencing cold hands and feet a lot. Any suggestions? How are you feeling otherwise? One thing I would say is that I have both Hashimoto. Well, I have both thyroid problems and a condition called Raynaud's, Reynauds, I believe. And Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease, and Raynaud's is also an autoimmune disease. And the symptoms of Raynaud's are cold hands and feet, and also that if your hands get or feet get cold, they turn like blue, like they look like or white. There's no blood in them, or actually the opposite. You can get if you get really hot, sometimes the blood gets stuck in your fingers, and then your fingers turn really red, or your toes. And so it might be that you also have Raynaud's and need to look at that because autoimmune conditions, they bring friends, right? You don't just have one, you have many. And so it might be that you have a secondary issue, or your medication might not be a high enough dose. So you can look at both of those things. Um, Melinda said, I'm glad you're talking about calories. Yeah. So here's the thing. I'll just say this. I totally support people who say you don't have to count calories. I think it's brilliant. I think calories really mess with a ton of people's heads. I'm not saying they're wrong. I think the advice to not bother with calories for a lot of people when you first start this ketogenic way of eating or a low carb way of eating is probably the right way to go. I had to kind of disassociate some of my feelings around calories from the way that I ate. But then over time, it became very frustrating. So I lost about 60, 65 pounds on a ketogenic way of eating. And then I just stalled out for 2 years. And I started to feel just broken and just terrible. And I realized that it was the calories at that point that I had to pay attention to. And once I started paying attention to the calories and manipulating them for good, not evil, I started losing weight again. And so I think we have to be careful with anything we say, right? As influencers, that there are times that calorie counting is probably not helpful, and then there are times that it is. And so for anyone who's been on a very long stall, it's probably time to look at them. But lots of people have weight loss success without counting calories, without looking at calories. Keto is very satiating. Most people will naturally change their food intake when they go ketogenic. However, a lot of studies have shown that by year 2 or 3 or beyond, um, that the hunger suppression effect of keto actually can wane in some people, and you just start drifting up. You start eating more and not even being aware of it. Your hunger hormones shift. And you, at that point, if you're not at the weight that you want to be at, if you haven't seen all the success you want to see, you do kind of have to look at calories. And so that's what I teach because I'm not working with people this is easy for. If this is easy for you and you don't have to count calories, I mean, you're welcome here. Everybody's welcome here. But then it's working. Good job. Great. Keep doing it. Right. I'm here to help the people who are like, that thing that people are telling me is not working. And then I'm like, okay, when it didn't work for me either, here's what I had to do. And here's the science behind it. And here's how it works. And so, yeah. So that's why I teach the way I teach and what I teach. And yeah, the low carb binge eating doesn't naturally go away. I find it gets much easier not to binge eat when you're keto for sure. But you still have to do the work to change the way your brain works, to change the way you think about food, the way you address food, the way you adapt. You've got to make all the shifts. And some of that involves looking at what is your total food intake over the course of the day, and then also being aware, because this is the thing that needs to be retrained in our brain. I'm not saying, when I say you need to look at calories, I'm not saying and eat as few as possible for as long as possible. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to look at them, be aware that they exist, look at how they're impacting you. At times, you're going to eat less to lose some weight, then you're going to come up to maintenance and eat more. Terry's talking about doing that, where she's going to come up and eat more for a while than if she had more weight she wanted to lose. I don't think Terry does, but if she did, she'd come back down. So you're periodizing it, spending some time up here, spending some time down here, spending some time up here, down here. And over time, that way, you'll drop some weight, drop some weight, drop some weight. We're not meant to live 24/7, 365 days a year on a diet. We're just not meant to. That's not the appropriate state for a human. It causes a lot of problems. I don't like people continuously dieting, but it does not negate the fact that calories are a measure. Um, so yeah. So Silent Runner mentions, yes, calories in, calories out, but I don't even like the phrase calories in, calories out, although I see you agree with me. I know you agree. I see this. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying, but I don't even like the phrase calories in, calories out because it's been so misused. Because as you say, we don't know what's happening under there. We're like a Rube Goldberg device, right? So some energy comes in, and then we're using energy. We don't know how much energy we need. It's like we're powering our own, like it's like we're in what do they call it? A power plant. If we're powering the power plant. We need the energy to power the power plant, but we don't know how much power the power plant needs. And so it's a game of figuring out what you need to eat. And sort of like I say with Terry, hey, take your calories up to here, see what your body does. The proof of the pudding is always in the tasting, people. So if you really want to know, do a thing, and then what's the effect? So I think I should be able to eat this much, eat that much. Is your weight going up or down? Okay, if your weight is going up, then you overshot your energy needs. Is your weight going down? Well, then you're under your energy needs. But if you want your weight to be going down, that's kind of what you need to do, right? So there's like this blind spot in the middle. There's in and there's out, but yeah, you don't know what's happening in the middle. And so you have to look at input, and then you have to look at results. So what is the scale doing and how much are you eating? And you can manipulate those two variables then, even though you don't necessarily know what's happening in the middle. Terry says, yes, I watch keto and carnivore influencers eating, and I'm like, how can you just eat intuitively? I eat 2 pounds in one sitting and wasn't counting and didn't watch myself. Yeah, so some people just naturally self-manage their hunger, and some of us have very, very broken hunger signals and need some help along the way. Kathleen said, been mostly carnivore about a month, loose stools. Yeah, for a lot of people, it just takes some time. I had crazy loose stools when I went carnivore. So it just keep with it. It should clear up. It should be helpful. I mean, it should self-resolve for most people. Fiber slows food through your digestive tract. So for some people, for a lot of people, it slows down that process and bulks up the stool. You don't have any bulk in there anymore. Because you don't have the fiber from the fibrous foods that you might have been eating before. But usually the body adjusts. All right, guys, we're going to call it a night. So thank you for joining me. This has been fun, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.